How do you, as a children's ministry leader, teach children to put God first in a me first culture?
Welcome to the Propel Podcast, inspiration and innovation to grow your church. I'm your host, Larry Witzel. If God is giving you big dreams for growing his kingdom, then this podcast is for you. Our goal is to offer practical training for effective evangelism in the Seventh-day Adventist ministry context, but we know that the principles we talk about here are applicable in many other churches as well. So wherever you're doing ministry, welcome to the Propel Podcast. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I want to encourage you to consider joining us for next year's Propel Conference coming to Tacoma, Washington, April 27 to 30, 2025. There is nothing like experiencing the Propel Conference in person as you gather with other like-minded leaders. And this is your chance to gain groundbreaking insights and practical training to grow your church. We'd love to see you there. It's coming April 27 to 30, 2025. to Tacoma, Washington. This episode features April Burville, a passionate children's ministry leader with over 20 years of volunteer experience in her local church and conference. She's taught Sabbath school, led VBS, participated in camp meetings. By trade, April is a preschool teacher, and by choice, she's a dedicated Bible enthusiast. And every day she feels blessed to nurture and share God's love with the most precious little ones. Her greatest passion is guiding children to know the truth and to say yes to Jesus. In this presentation, April shares the importance of volunteering and community engagement in children's ministry. She explains the differences between children's church and vacation Bible school and tells the significance of planning and budgeting for these initiatives. April also shares strategies for recruiting and supporting volunteers, promoting children's programs, and creating engaging church experiences that foster relationships. We'll hear from April in just a moment. First, though, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, the North American Division Children's Ministries. Are you searching for ways to truly empower the youth in your church? The North American Division's Children's Ministries has everything that you need to make a difference, from dynamic curriculums and expert training to engaging vacation Bible school materials and creative resources. They've got you covered. Whether you're guiding young hearts through faith or inspiring them to say yes to Jesus for the first time, these tools are designed to help you nurture the next generation. Visit childmin.org today and start making a real impact in the lives of your church's children. Okay, let's turn to April Burville. Here is her presentation from the Church Revitalization Breakout Track at the 2024 Propel Conference, and her topic is VBS Children's Church and Discipling Children.
So for the NAD Children's Ministry, like our hashtag is hashtag Say Yes to Jesus. We're trying to encourage as many children as we possibly can to make that choice to say yes for Jesus. To start, I'm going to give you a heart, and I want you to choose a few markers. And what we're going to do on our heart is write, and you can decorate and color if you want to. We're going to write, what is our heart purpose for doing these programs for children? So on mine, like, I would definitely write, well, first of all, I have my own children, and I want them to say yes to Jesus, and I want to influence them. So, like, if not me, then who, right? If I want them to be a part of saying yes to Jesus, I need to lead by example and be a part of that. So I'd write my own children. I would also write, like, there are children in my community that I see that, like, they need love. They need to feel like they have a safe space. So I want you to just take a few minutes and write the things that, like, influence your heart for choosing to implement some of these programs, like Vacation Bible School, Children's Church, follow-up programs, things like that. And the reason why I had you write some of these things on your heart is because when you write something down, it actually like instills it in your memory a little bit more, and it makes it feel more real, and it reminds you and keeps things present in your mind. We're going to be talking about kind of like the implementation process of putting on Vacation Bible School, Children's Church, and these other follow-up programs. And it can be consumed with a lot of action and a lot of tasks and a lot of doings. And sometimes we can get so absorbed with all the things that have to be done that we forget where our heart was in the beginning. And we want to make sure that our heart purposes are always present, and that we're not forgetting the real heart behind why we're doing things. On the flip side, sometimes we can focus all about the heart, but then we forget to start taking the actions to make it happen. So I want to encourage you with teaching you how we implement this stuff, right? So this is Vacation Bible School, Children's Church, and follow-up program. So it's just a couple of us, so we'll just talk with each other. But what would you say are the differences between the programs of like a Vacation Bible School versus a children's church?
What was probably more on, not necessarily Adventist kids, right? VBS, anybody can come to that program. Much less so at children's church, although we were hoping to get Adventist there, but the main core was probably Adventist. One is heavier on the theology probably than right? Vacation Bible was just exposure to Jesus.
Mm-hmm. What about you? What would you say the differences are between children's church and Vacation Bible School?
Well, children's church would be on Sabbath, for one.
Yeah.
And VBS is on E-Phase, right?
Yeah.
It's been 30 years since my kids went. More, 35.
Yeah.
Maybe they changed it. And yeah, what he said, and the community kids who come to VBS may need some coaching on how to be in a group or something. It takes more listening because they're not in our subculture.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that you're both right. You're both right on the money. It's like, so Vacation Bible School is typically like, we're trying to invite and get a lot of neighborhood kids, and we're trying to get non-Adventist kids. And children's church is usually for our own attending kids. However, Vacation Bible School is also usually an opportunity to get to know these kids and then inviting them to children's church, which is another program specifically for the kids that, they'll be excited to want to try to come. If they really enjoyed your Vacation Bible School, then they're probably thinking, I'm definitely going to enjoy doing children's church as well. And maybe it can be an avenue that kind of help families feel comfortable with coming to church. And so you'll kind of like see, while the planning process and implementation of both is pretty much the same, you have to do all the same steps pretty much. But the kind of dynamics you have going on is, like you said, like children's church is going to be like a lot more, you're going to dive a little bit deeper into the Bible. You're going to be a little bit more theology based. Not that Vacation Bible School isn't theology based, but more, you're diving deeper. And another like difference is like for Vacation Bible School, you're pretty much getting kids dropped off, parents go, and then come back at pickup. Whereas for children's church, you're really trying to get the whole family to come and stay and hang out. Not that it has to be that way, but that's kind of the idea, right?
You're talking to stay within children's church?
Yeah. Well, and some churches, they run like a children's church in tandem with like an adult sermon. Some churches do that. I have a friend in Chicago. Their church was all like older people, like all retired individuals. And they were like looking at their like inner city area, and they were saying like, we don't have any kids coming to our church. Like, why not? And like, how do we get them here and stuff? And so they decided to start doing children's church, and they go and they have a bus and they pick up kids in the city and they take them to church, and they do just children's church with those kids, and they feed them a meal. It's an area where there is like a food shortage, inner city, low income families.
So there's no problem with parents worrying about their children being taken off on a bus.
Yeah. Well, these parents don't mind, I guess. But yeah, it's, and their church really is, it went from being a church of retirees to being a children's church. Like almost everybody that attends are children. And, yeah, so they do church, and they feed them a hot meal, and then they drive them all back home. And then she said, after families got kind of comfortable with letting their kids go week after week, they have done several events where it's family inclusive for like a reunion night, game night, kind of thing. I think she said one of the events they did was a like community barbecue picnic thing outside. And so children's church can look like a lot of different things, and you just have to say like, okay, what do I have in my church, and what can this look like for us?
So would they serve meat to people, or are you thinking a good meal has meat?
I think they did. I think she said that they had hot dogs and chips, and that they just, because again, you're trying to reach people where they are. And
Yeah.
and again, like every church and church community is a little different. Yeah. And so children's church, while we typically think of it as being like, this is like for our kids that are already regular attenders, it can also be a complete outreach to non-Adventist kids.
And that seems to be a theme.
Yeah. Well, and like we were talking earlier, it's like game night can be turned into like a screen-free zone, and it can be an opportunity to help kids and adults engage with other humans without a screen, which is a real dire need that we need right now in our communities. Okay, so if you are a director or leader of, say, you're going to do Vacation Bible School or a children's church, these are kind of some of your steps that you're going to need to make sure you implement. Take an inventory of the supplies you already have. I always tell people, like, look at what you've already got and plan around that versus starting from scratch and feeling like you need to buy a whole lot of stuff. A lot of things in our Sabbath school classes can be repurposed and reused for multiple different activities and things. And like, if you get a basic supplies of like games materials, like, some cones, some pool noodles, a few soccer balls and stuff like that, you can end up making up multiple different games and repurpose and reusing those kinds of things over and over again. So before you get started with anything, always assess what you've already got and plan from there. Select a curriculum and set a realistic budget. So that means you're not like shooting for the moon and asking your church board for $1 million, because they're probably not going to approve that. But also, if you have the opportunity to be asking a church board for a budget, help them to realize the value and the importance of the children's division, and, ask for what you really, truly need. Usually a Vacation Bible School curriculum is going to run you $150 just for the pack with all the booklets and stuff like that. And then you're going to end up needing different supplies. Sometimes you can get things donated, and sometimes you can get people to like also donate like the snack materials and things like that. But if you don't set a budget, you're not able to stay within a budget. you know, and also if you don't set a budget and you end up spending more than somebody else or, you know, on the board or whatever thinks is necessary. At least if you've got a budget and you've gotten people to agree on it, you can always refer back to, well, this was approved. And that's going to look different for every different church. So I can't even really set a complete recommendation on that. But, you know, look at how many kids you're going to have and plan accordingly. Set dates and events set dates for both the event and set dates to train your volunteers and having volunteer meetings. I can't stress this enough. Volunteers love to volunteer, especially like teenagers are great volunteers for these programs. But they need to know that they're equipped to do what it is you're asking them to do. And they need to feel confident in implementing. So while you very easily could just have your story time leader, you could give them the book and you could say, okay, VBS is in 3 weeks, see you then. If you haven't really connected and they haven't been able to bounce their questions off of you and decide on like, what is this station going to be decorated as? And really, first of all, if you don't reconnect and do some meetings and training meetings, you don't really know how well they're going to implement that. And also they might not feel supported, and volunteers that feel supported are more likely to continue volunteering year after year. If they know that they're going to have the resources they need, if they know that they've got somebody to go to for some guidance on, you know, a lot of like teenagers love to volunteer and they're great like group leaders, but they don't always feel confident about like, well, what do I do when a kid is like melting down crying? Because they don't have any experience with behavior management. So it's really, it's a really good idea to do some trainings on saying, these are how you handle, you know, behavior situations. And if you have, and letting them know who to go to. If you have a situation that's more than you can handle, who's your adult point person, you know? And even adults can sometimes not know or struggle with knowing how to like handle disciplinary like issues, or like what is our church policy or our conference policy. If you don't set dates and make sure that your volunteers have them in their calendars and ready to go, they won't happen. And as much as nobody likes adding more meetings to their list, if you don't have the meetings, you won't be prepared. And if you're not prepared, it will show when it comes time for the kid. When the kids show up, they see it. They know when you're not prepared. Oh, this especially also goes along with whomever you have doing your music or your skits, that kind of thing. If they're not meeting ahead of time and they don't have it in their calendar to meet and plan and prepare, it's going to show when they stand up on stage and they don't know their lines, or they haven't rehearsed the songs and they're not in sync with each other. It seems like a thing that shouldn't have to be mentioned, but it absolutely has to be mentioned because I've been to way too many programs where people are just not prepared. And that also, it shows the kids know if you've been invested and you've put in your time and your efforts. Recruiting volunteers and promoting. We're gonna go on and we're gonna talk about some ideas on how to do this, because I know especially recruiting volunteers is everybody's hardest gig. So these are my tips for recruiting volunteers. First of all, when you put up a sign-up sheet, and or if you're doing a call from like the front of church, be very clear about what the jobs are and what that's going to entail of our volunteers. A lot of times people will see something like a station leader and they're just like, well, I don't even know what that means. So like, I don't want to do that. But if they see that you're looking for a station leader for the snack booth, and what that's going to entail is preparing and serving snacks and water, and that they will have a junior helper with them. When they see all of that outlined, they're like, oh, that's not too bad, I can do that, you know? Or a Bible story station. What does Bible story station entail? Letting them know you will be given the book with the story, so you don't have to make this up. And you're going to dress in costume, and you're going to tell the story of fill in the blank, whatever your program is going to be. When they know, people are more likely to sign up and volunteer, because when it comes to volunteering, you know, how many of you guys have like signed up for something and then you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be? Right? I've done that before. And you just want to be really clear and concise so that people know what it is that they're getting themselves into. And again, when people have when people kind of have like a natural knack or a natural talent, for instance, the person that has been doing our game station at our Vacation Bible School for the last several years, she's a PE teacher. She's like, this is my jam, right? And I'm off for the summer, I'm available, and this is what I love doing anyway. So she will volunteer over and over and over again because this is like her natural thing. And you'll find that too. The same thing with the person that has been doing our snack station for the several years. She loves coming up with creative ways to serve food, and she does like, you know, cuts hearts out of carrots and things that I wouldn't spend the time doing. But that's her interest, that's her passion. And so when you can be really clear and people can sign up for something that's in their zone, that is their natural talent or that they enjoy, you'll find that you don't have to go find a new snack station leader every single year because you've already got somebody that wants to do it. And always follow up with your previous volunteers. I always say, make sure not only on the last day of your program that you say thank you, but like take the effort to write a card and send a card in the mail and say thank you. Make sure that person knows that the service they gave was really valuable. Even, and maybe even especially, your teen and junior helpers. Because if you can get a teenager to commit to doing a station leader activity, like teenagers can often get their volunteer credits for it. Private and public schools usually ask teenagers to do volunteer time. So they can usually get volunteer credits, but they're gonna wanna come back when they know that you valued them, when they feel like you followed up, and even if you can take, it's simple and it sounds silly, but if you can take inventory, you know, get your volunteer information list and make sure you ask their birthdays. And then you put it in your phone, like I put it in my calendar, whose birthday is what day, and then it'll send me a reminder, oh, it's Jana's birthday. Text her that morning and say, hey, happy birthday, Jana. Takes me all of 2 seconds. But what does that say to a 17-year-old? Like that somebody cares about them, that like somebody who's not in their immediate family remembered them and knows them. And then when I say, hey, Jana, guess what? VBS is coming around. Do you think you could help me again this year? She's more likely to say yes, because we've started to build a relationship where I've made her feel valued. This is a great one. If you can do this regularly, you will find more and more people interested in volunteering. If you can highlight current and previous volunteers from other activities, you could do something as simple as like a slide in your church announcements with like their picture and say, thank you, Tyson. He was one of our crew leaders this last year at Vacation Bible School. He did an awesome job. If anybody else is interested in joining Tyson this next year, if you do one of those once a month, when somebody's in church and they see their picture show up and a thank you announcement to everybody else, that feels good, right? It feels good and it makes you feel valued. And then other people after church will be like, hey, Tyson, I didn't even know that you were volunteering for VBS. That's so cool. Both adults and children, or teens and juniors, if they can, get this kind of recognition, it makes them feel good and more likely to volunteer again. Also, somebody who maybe wasn't going to church at the time that we did VBS might hear about it and be like, oh, that's something I would be interested in. And some of your volunteers might volunteer for things that aren't part of the full program. Like I have a gal who doesn't, first of all, she works during the day, so she's not available during VBS, but even if she did, she's like, I don't really want to go work with the kids, but I love decorating. So she comes and helps us the week before Vacation Bible School in the evenings and just does amazing, elaborate decorations and helps with the setup every year. So, people will serve in the areas where they feel comfortable, and that takes a huge load off of, everybody else if somebody is willing to come do decorating. And then also the personal ask. I mean, it sounds silly, and a lot of times we just don't feel comfortable because we don't know what to ask people. But the reality is, if you physically go up to somebody and you make eye contact and you say, hey, I'm in charge of recruiting volunteers. I've got these positions open still. Are any of those something that you would be available for or interested in helping? I mean, people are more likely to say yes if you walk up and actually ask them than if the sign-up sheet is just posted on a bulletin board, Because again, it all has to do with that feeling of being needed and valued. And if I personally ask you to go on a journey with me, you're much more likely to go than if I just say, got a spare seat in the back, you want to go? Or, if I don't say anything, but I've got the spare seat, right? You might not even know that the spare seat's there. But if I tell you there's a spare seat and I invite you to come with me, you're much more likely to come. And then also, whoever your current volunteers are, when there's little pockets of, you've got most of your team collected, but you're I still need somebody to do this. I still need somebody that can set up, I don't know, whatever. I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. But when you've got little pockets, once you've got your main team, usually I'm a person, I know people, right? So you might not know everybody that has every talent, but your friend might know somebody that you don't know that has a talent that can fill in the gap. So, always ask be transparent. Be transparent with the current volunteers and team you have and ask them to ask others. Sometimes it works well when multiple churches kind of pair up and say, hey, we're going to do an event together, because one small church on my own, I might not have enough volunteers, but if I pair up with a sister church, we might be able to pull something off together. And so always reach across the divide and try to make connections, and volunteers bring volunteers. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is promoting, because another, area that as the director or the leader you have to think about is, I can make this incredible program, but if nobody knows about it, nobody's going to come. Right? So we need to do some promotional things. Social media, I would say nowadays in our time, social media posts are the most effective, and you are able to send a message far and wide. You can do this for free, basically. You create a post and you ask all of your volunteers to share it. You can even pay for promotional advertising, and you can just nowadays, it's pretty incredible. On social media, you can pay for promotional advertising to just hit everybody in a certain zip code, and so you could do a solid post. You could do video posts where you say, hi, my name's April. I'm going to be hosting a vacation Bible school at this church at this time. And we'd love to see you and your children come. It can be a short 10-second video, and that will catch the attention of parents in your area. And your friends will share it because they're like, oh, like, I know her. I know she runs a cool program. I know that the kids will have fun. And they will share it with, maybe they don't have kids, but they might have grandkids or nieces or nephews. A lot of times when it comes to our VBSs, we have a lot of kids that come in family groups of cousins. It's Auntie comes with her minivan and she's got 12, cousins all in the back. And so social media is pretty much that's the most effective thing these days. Posters and flyers. Your local library will let you post advertising any children's programs, be it vacation Bible schools, children's church, family nights, pretty much any event that your church is doing. Local libraries will let you post on their bulletin boards. And they also generally will let you hand flyers to parents if you show up to story time. If you just talk to the librarian ahead of time and say, hey, my church is going to be doing this program. Do you mind if I hand these out when story time's over? You just stand at the door of the library and you catch the parents. So look up what time my local library does story time. And that is a great place to meet and connect with parents and hand out flyers and invites. Grocery stores generally have bulletin boards. I don't know who looks at those because I don't generally, but they will let you post them. And large signs outside your church. You can get the big banners made. What our church generally does is we have one standard vacation Bible school banner where we peel off the stickers of the dates and times. So we only had to purchase the main banner one time, and we've reused it 6 or 7 years. And you've got to have it big and visible so people driving by actually see it. Those little those little tiny sidewalk signs, that's not big enough for somebody driving by, especially a distracted driver with children in the car. You need it big and visible.
The grocery stores found that, for our God's Closet little flyer, they wouldn't let us pass them out in the store, obviously. But they said you can stand outside the store there.
Yeah.
You can check it. And then the manager said, well, what is this again? And he took them in and gave them out himself. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, because probably at first, people are kind of off-put about anybody that wants to hand out flyers, right? But then once they see what your program actually is, then they're like, oh, that is something I could get on board with. Yeah. Also, there's going to be lots of childcare centers in your area. Again, those are generally privately owned, so it's hit and miss whether or not they're going to let you or not let you, but it's always worth an ask for childcare centers if you want to invite families in your neighborhood. And community newsletters and email lists. So in our community, there's they do a mailer. This is city stuff, They tell you about what the water testing results were and things like that. But for free, local churches and organizations are allowed to do little posts and blurbs. And so we always advertise in that local newsletter. And I think that they do a mailer and a new email newsletter so that just your local community gets that kind of advertising. And it's always worth looking into seeing if they have that option and if they will let you. But yeah, so, and then what I didn't put on there also is, again, just like the volunteers, it's the personal ask, If you know somebody with kids, invite them. You know, if you know somebody with grandkids, say, hey, will you give this to your daughter-in-law? Let her know my church is doing this program and see if they're interested. And then also kind of like talking and feeling out the needs of people that you're inviting. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I would, but I don't have transportation. And like, okay, how can I help solve that problem? Is there somebody in my, in my volunteer group that lives in your neighborhood that would be willing to give rides or whatever? Sometimes the hindrance is totally solvable, Sometimes we can help. And same thing with volunteers. Like I've had multiple teenage volunteers where I'm like, all right, so you need a ride? I'm going to go be the bus at 8 a.m. before Vacation Bible School, because their parents are totally willing to let them, but mom and dad's working in the summer and they don't drive yet. So, sometimes you just got to have conversations like, what is the reason that you're not coming or not able to? And how can I help solve that problem? What about you guys? Do you have how has your churches done advertising? Sometimes when we share with each other, usually I get all my ideas from these trainings from you guys.
So the city council approved us to put the big banner in when you come to town. So for the clothing, the children's clothing.
Oh, cool.
So every time they just go talk to the city council again, or the city manager at that point, and they just take it out there and they put it up for us.
That's awesome.
And then the social media, I have a separate page for that particular ministry. And then I just want to post something, it just has a little button and it says post it or advertise it. And you just follow the directions or find out more about it. I usually drop a pin around the church, and then you can specify, of course, who you want to have in that area.
Yeah.
Young families and stuff. So.
And with social media, you can also have it lead to like a link where they give you their contact information, right? Yeah, so that makes it really useful, because then you can follow up and send them other invites to other programs, and just even following up and say like, how is your family doing? Do you have anything I can pray about for you? Again, like meeting a physical need like your ministry of like giving them clothes, and then following up and asking them like, do you have something I can pray for you over? Makes them feel valued, makes them feel like more than just a number. Yeah.
The other thing is that once you post it, and what ends up happening is we make it public, of course, when we post it. I noticed that the community people, the Chamber of Commerce, they just start grabbing and putting it all over the place.
I'm gonna start sharing it.
Yeah, we had like 5 different organizations sharing it in the newspaper, not even the local newspaper, somewhere out in Hope and North.
Oh, really?
And Roseburg did it. So what happened was, it's taken, three different times of doing it, and now the communities basically, once they see it, they grab it, they put it everywhere.
That is so cool. That's really awesome.
We don't pay anything more than $100 per event on advertising.
That's awesome.
And you said you do it once a month,
We do it every once a quarter.
once a quarter. Oh.
Yeah, I can have volunteers once a month.
Did you have something you were going to share? I saw your hand a little bit go up.
And don't think outside the box. With this was not for children, but we put on classes for like studying personalities, relationships, how to get along with each other, and we put our posters up in bars in the Dalles.
In the bars? That's awesome.
Yeah, I was feeling a little rebellious, and I was like, I hope somebody sees me going in there and says, "Hi, what are you doing in a bar?" And I can say, "I'm doing
That's awesome.
Unless the wrong person gets a hold of it or something.
That's good.
That's awesome.
I mean, maybe people who go to bars might be glad to have some help for their children. I don't know.
Yeah. Those people have children. Yeah. Any other ideas? Anything you?
We did. In California, it's a little different than Oregon. Oregon, they don't hear about the word God, but in California, they get rid of the word God or Jesus on some stuff.
Oh, really?
And then they would take it to public schools.
Yeah.
We had a dental clinic, and it had something to do with God, so we took that off, and then like call it Families of Faith or something instead. So then they took all of our little invite cards and they put it throughout the whole school district. But
And the school district let you advertise?
Yeah, I just took them all.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sometimes the schools let you if you
Yeah.
aren't too pushy.
Mm-hmm.
I got her.
You change the words to be the right way. All right. So from your observation, and I don't know, this might be tricky for you guys. I don't know if you've done both. Which do you think children get more excited about? Church or Vacation Bible School? And I'm just talking church in general, not children's church.
Bible school for sure.
You think so? What is your favorite thing about church?
Probably talking to people, although our new pastor preaches some really good sermons. He brings out points I hadn't thought about. I've been an Adventist all my life, so it's nice to not be able to predict the sermon when he starts to talk. But, I mean, for children, it seems to me like that would be more attractive to having activities and vary them, so that you're going about all those different stations and doing different things. Because I have ADHD, so I like to move around. It's hard to sit still this long.
What about you? What's your favorite thing about church?
I'm the pastor. I usually ask my members that question. I don't think I should have a favorite thing. I just go and be the pastor, and I do want to know what they really like about church. And I did a survey. I have 2 churches that I pastor. I gave questionnaires just 2 weeks ago. They like the fellowship, you know, with potluck and things like that, you know. They like feeling like they belong and things like that. There are different answers from different churches, but I think it's maybe good sermons. It's on me now as a pastor. But I don't ever think about my favorite thing. I just like being there. I have to make sure that the church, from the Sabbath school until the last part of the service, is good. So I have to make sure everything is good. You know, even the things that I'm not really doing, I'm not part of it.
Right, you're just like overseeing
Yes.
and making sure. What's your favorite thing about church?
I like good music, but also like seeing the kids interact in the children's story, just thinking about it. You know, it's just it's kind of off the cuff, and they're engaging with that person. And sometimes even during the sermon, they'll engage with me during the sermon. And it's like, wow, they're really paying attention. And I don't know. Frankly, I don't know if our worship services are very natural for kids. That's my feeling. Like compared to the Jewish system, it seems like we've gotten very regimented in a certain cultural style or something. And the kids have to be quiet, and you see them interacting. That seems natural, right? They're interacting with that person, and sometimes they're in some interacting. It just feels like it closes them down. So just seeing the interaction.
So your favorite thing is seeing the interaction? What's your favorite thing about church?
We have a pretty good discipleship program. It's fantastic to see the new believers and people just come baptized and grow and make disciples.
So what I hear consistently, though, is things that have to do with relationship. It's people need people, right? And it's no different for children than it is for adults. What they're going to be excited about going to church for is the relationships that they're building, whether that be with other peers or that be with the adults in their lives that are influencing. I'm going to skip the favorite thing about VBS. But which do you think kids would be more likely to invite their friends to? Church, just church, the way we already do it, or Vacation Bible School?
Yes, you can move around and do different stuff.
Generally VBS, right? because they know it's going to be exciting. They know it's going to be for them, right? And that's where I would love to encourage more and more people. I know that it might not be able to be something that you do every single week, but if you can adopt the idea and implement a children's church, whether that be in tandem at the same time as an adult church, or if the whole church rallies around and intentionally does church for kids, if you can make church that place where kids are getting that connection, but they're also feeling like this is an exciting thing that I want to invite my friends to. VBS might be the avenue where we reach the neighborhood kids, and then children's church could be the continuing growing and learning and getting whole families to come to church.
If I have a family worship focus rather than just.
Yes, yeah. If we could make church more family oriented, more, like you said, like kid friendly, where kids engage more, we're more likely to get our kids to invite their friends. And if we can get the kids to invite their friends, we can, like we were talking about earlier, we can teach them to be their own little evangelists, their own little witness. So this is order your favorite pizza. What's your favorite kind of pizza? What do you put on a pizza?
I don't like many things.
You don't have pizza?
I don't like cheese.
Oh my goodness.
I do like, olives and mushrooms and all kinds of grains on top, but no cheese.
No cheese for you, huh?
Olive oil,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, put that one on hold. What's your favorite? What kind of pizza would you order? What's your favorite pizza?
Cheese pizza.
And what's your favorite pizza?
Mushrooms, onions, olives, not green peppers, the chilies, poblano chilies instead of green peppers. And
You like chilies, but you don't like green peppers? That's funny.
green peppers.
I like green peppers, but I don't like chilies.
It's not very spicy, it's just right. And I don't know, the green peppers have a better aftertaste. But also maybe, yeah, like cheese, feta cheese on top.
Oh, feta cheese, yum.
Yeah, and some sweet basil.
Ooh, yeah. sweet basil. And what about you? What's your favorite?
So they do have non-dairy cheese.
Disclaimer.
That's right.
Just regular cheese is good.
Pineapple and black olive.
Pineapple and black olives, you and my 13-year-old would be best friends. Yeah, that's what he wants every time. So everybody kind of likes a different sort of pizza, right? Now, if we were going to order one large pizza for a group of kids, what would we probably choose? Cheese?
Maybe black olives.
Yeah, maybe cheese and olives. Yeah. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like the black olives. Right? So when we're thinking about planning our programs for our churches, we need to think about not necessarily what's my favorite pizza, but what's their favorite pizza, right? So if I'm planning church, and I know that kids love to get their hands messy, kids love to interact and put on a costume when they're learning the Bible story, what is it that the kids love? How can I design my church pizza to be kid-friendly, right? If we can keep that on the forefront of our mind, that it's not always about my favorite pizza. It's more like, what's their favorite pizza?
Balance that with teaching them, stretching them beyond just their focus.
All right.
Like teaching them, like there's a time to have quiet prayer, there's a time for this, there's a time. Like, do you incorporate all of that into your ideas?
I wasn't exactly getting to that, but I do like that question. And I think that has to do with the format of your church. Okay, so typical church format, right? We're going to do praise and worship. We're going to do prayer and offering and maybe a children's story and then the sermon, right? So if your format is predictable and they know that there's always going to be a children's story, right? They're going to look forward to that part. And like if we were going to do children's church, it still technically has like a sermon, but your sermon is going to be like an interactive Bible story, right? And so we can teach them through routine, kind of like the importance of prayer. One thing that the Advent Source produced Vacation Bible School has that the other, I'm not saying don't use group, but the other Vacation Bible schools like Group and Big Fish don't have is a prayer station. Whereas in the Advent Source, one of the stations is learning to pray. And they actually teach kids like interactive ways to pray, that sometimes it's writing and sometimes it's quiet time and sometimes it's sharing. Sometimes it's talking out loud and sometimes it's quiet and personal. But I think that is achieved really through routine. And honestly, the same thing goes with like, okay, maybe we can't do children's church every single week because that's exhausting. But what if we did it once a quarter and the kids knew, okay, like coming up on this 13th Sabbath or whatever, that's when it's children's church and we're going to have a lot of fun and we're going to be more interactive. It's through a routine that they kind of learn that there's church days when we have to sit quietly through the sermon, and then there's church days that we don't. As a pastor, so this is more for you too, there are online printables for your older kids where you can have them have like, they've got like a little section for like keywords that I'm listening for, notes, and a little corner for like doodling, and a little corner for ask me a question of clarification. And this is what I do when I preach. I tell those kids, if they have something in every single box at the end of the sermon and they bring it to me, I will trade them their paper, or if they just show me their paper, I will trade them and give them a candy bar. That thing will be full every single time. They will hear your keywords. And like I have some older kids now, so this is an interesting thing is like, we've gotten into a routine of like, this is how we do church, right? And so when I'm out of town on weekends now and I'm calling in on Sabbath afternoon, I'm like, I will like, let's see, this was 3 weeks ago, I was in Hawaii doing a training, and then I called Sabbath afternoon, and my both of my older two boys were talking to me at separate times, and they said the same thing. They said, you know what was so cool is that the sermon was the same as Sabbath school. We were talking about like Christ helping us like take our burdens off and holding off our burdens. So even when I'm not at church with them and they're with grandma, they're paying attention because they've built up the repetition and the habit. So it's about teaching a habit. And you know what? I am not ashamed to bribe children with candy to get them into a healthy habit of listening during a sermon, because I really believe that spiritual growth that happens over time is worth millions. And I don't mind trading them candy for it.
I have a pastor's store in the office. They would come in after the service to try out the sanctuary, and we just come in and pick something out from there's bottles, there's little toys and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, cool.
Pick them once every week. I have one church, that's what I did.
But yeah, if you can have like some of those printables that like kind of give them an avenue of like a direction that you're going and stuff like that, to listen. And what I do is I just have them on clipboards, and so they're available for any of the kids coming in. They can grab one as they walk into the sanctuary.
So I had the children's story every week, so what happened? I'd tell them the story, or someone would tell them the story, and then I would be there with the FBI, Faithful Bible Investigative Sheet, and there would be answers in the bulletin, so they would have to pay attention as to who's doing what, and then during the sermon, there'd be a special slide that would pop up. And then if they got all those answers, then they become that whole line of kids.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
Captions on stuff like that. But yeah. thinking of how to do it differently. Like how to do it where maybe the parent, because I have 4 churches now, so I'm not able to do that consistently, so I'm thinking of how can I get the service. I got one church, particularly in Rural Creek, where they have all these kids and families coming for clothing. How can we then worship together as a family where the parents are learning how to do this with their kids so that when they're not there, whatever, they can keep it going. So,
Yeah, you might just kind of like want to take a couple Sabbaths when you are there and just be like, hey, this is the intentionality I would love to see families doing, and like I can do this when I'm here, but when I'm not here, here's how you guys can implement it so we can together help our kids grow in that direction. So this is just about successful children's ministry points. And successful children's ministry is going to create an environment where children worship God at their level. So that includes prayer and praise time. I think if you have the ability to talk with whoever plans the music and praise for your churches, if they can choose one children's song each week that they do intentionally, just include it as a part of the mix. If you choose one children's song in that praise time, it makes kids feel like the praise time is for them too. And it's not just, the kids' praise and the adults' praise. Ask them to put one children's song into the mix. Memorable, interactive environment where children can be involved in praising God. So this is more along that lines of like making church a place and making our worship services a place where kids have the opportunity, if they do have to sit in a sermon, and they're not in a space where they have the ability to get their wiggles out, what can we give them to do instead? Can our little ones have a coloring sheet that goes along somehow with the sermon and connects them and makes them feel like, I'm not just trying to entertain you while grown-ups listen, but this is for you too,
There's a website we can take the keywords in your sermon and scramble into a word search.
Yes. That's the kind of thing that makes kids feel like you've intentionally thought about them too in your sermon, in your prep. Allowing children to express themselves in a Christian environment. Kids gotta wiggle sometimes, and I know like in our Adventist environment, it's looked down upon if they're dancing or whatever, but if they're really into the music, let them move and let them enjoy themselves. If they're not causing trouble, we don't have to always hush, you know what I mean? We don't always have to hush everything. Let's make our churches a place where kids can be expressive. You might have a kid that's a real artist and you might not know about it. Say, hey, I'm going to be doing a sermon on the parable of the lost sheep. While I'm doing my sermon, would you stand off to the side and would you draw or would you paint a picture of this story of the lost sheep? That's getting a kid that with a different talent included and sharing their talent with their church and like highlighting them for their natural abilities, things like that. Teaching children stewardship values and principles. That's going to kind of go more into our next segment on involving children in mission and service. But, it is valuable that the kids that are coming into our spaces, that they know like this is God's house and we want to take good care of it. And we can be involved in that care of the church. That means cleaning up after ourselves and volunteering on church work bee days and seeing them and their volunteer work as equally valuable as any adult's volunteer work. Maybe they can't mow the lawn, but they can wash windows. Having church work bees where kids are involved in caring for the church and be like, this is your building. It's not the building of the older people in the church. This is our building. It belongs to you just as much as it belongs to me. and teaching children leadership skills and allowing them to practice them among their peers. That's using our juniors and our teens at their level with their abilities as volunteering to help implement children's church and vacation Bible school. And like I said, you get one teenager to volunteer, you're going to get another teenager to volunteer and another and another. So letting them take on some leadership roles, maybe they might not do things perfectly, but isn't it better that they do things imperfectly and that they're there than if they were to feel excluded? All right, so that is for this section. We have, okay, I have 3 handouts that all is like the reminders. Yeah, just take one and hand it down. And this section is really pretty quick. But my biggest takeaway for this one, involving children in mission and service. The biggest takeaway from this, I'll just tell you from the beginning, is no person is too small to be of service. We all have our own little abilities from 2 to 92 where we can be a part of mission and service. So Matthew 20, 26 and 28, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. This verse with kids can be a little bit hard to understand, right? Like, how do we help them to understand that what this is really talking about is, what this verse is really talking about is implementing a lifestyle of continual service towards others, kindness, and putting others first. How do you, as a children's ministry leader, teach children to put God first in a me first culture? You guys have any ideas?
Asking.
My family, I have to model it myself. Like kids just think it's straight.
Modeling it, yes.
You have to model it, or otherwise you're being fake.
Yeah. So in this morning's segment, when we were talking about being a witness, you're exactly right. Kids are gonna, it's caught more than it's taught, right? They're going to do what they see us doing. If we are active in service, kids will be active in service. Okay, so this is just a temporary toy, but I'm going to share a toy with you. Do you want to choose a toy out of here?
Sure.
Oh, you got a magnet attached to yours. Oh, you got a bonus hair tie too for that big head of hair you got. So imagine back a long, long time ago when you were 2 years old. How would it feel if somebody shared with you? If I gave you a toy and I said, hey, I brought some toys to share with you, how does that make you feel?
It's fun.
It's fun. You say, thank you, I'm important. How does it feel as an adult when I share something with you?
Well,
A little confused.
it makes me feel like you're going to make a point.
So sharing is caring. You guys have all heard that phrase, right? Sharing is caring, from 2 to 92 to 102. At all ages, when somebody goes out of their way to share their resources with you, it makes you feel valuable. And those toddler ages, it can be very hard to want to share. They're in an age where they want to hold everything. Everything is mine, mine, mine. But it's through practicing of us continually sharing with them that teaches them to share back with us, right? And in those early years, it's usually toddler learning to share with care provider. And then it changes to preschoolers learning to share with other preschoolers. And when we can negotiate these things, then we can negotiate further. Unfortunately, in the culture we live in, too often, especially because we have so many families with only a single child at home, it's even harder to learn because then they have to learn that sharing dynamic with peers. But once you learn the sharing dynamic, it's easier and easier at every age and stage. But we can't miss it. We can't miss out on knowing that by sharing something of mine helps somebody else feel good, right? And so we have to teach and incorporate sharing into literally everything we do. And we have to teach kids that sharing isn't always a physical object. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's listening. So planning service projects. We need to take into account for what is the age of the group of the kids that we have, what is their abilities, and also what are their interests, right? And then asking them, what do you think this community needs? How do you think you could be of service? Sometimes our kids come up with better service projects ideas than we do. Finding out the needs of your communities. Like you've already mentioned, you guys have found out a big need in your community is the clothing ministry. And that's something that you can get your kids on board with because you can put out a note, say, hey, our clothing ministry is happening next month. Can you guys, go through all your clothes and anything that you've outgrown and you're ready to donate? You can teach them how, they're a kid, they don't even have to spend money, that they can be of service and care towards somebody else with that kind of a project.
Kids involved in there, basically take them from the registration to the main shopping area.
That's so cool, yeah. It's also really beneficial to just go ahead and partner with already established organizations. One thing that my church participates in every year is Operation Christmas Child. You guys familiar with Operation Christmas Child? So basically what we do is they are a different organization, Christian, but they have us pack a shoebox with small gifts and toiletries, necessities for children all over the world. And actually one cool thing about it, so we pack the shoebox with their Christmas presents, and then we can track the shipping and we can see what country, what destination it landed in. So we know our shoeboxes this last year went to the Philippines. But so our kids will pack these boxes with little toys and toothbrushes and soap and whatnot. And they always put in a note card with their own note, personal note, and drawings and things like that. And that's an organization they've already got their wheels turning. They take care of all the shipping. All we have to do is pack the box and ship it send it off to them. So things like that kids can be involved in, and that's really cool too because the kids can take the shoebox and they can go to the store and they can think what would I want if I was a 7-year-old girl, because you choose what age you're packing your box for and whatnot. An attitude of gratitude. This also is something it should just be common sense, or maybe it is common sense, but too often we forget to pause and be grateful and thankful for everything we already have. And again, it's caught more than it's taught. And if we have a continual heart and where we're in the presence of children and expressing gratitude for the things in our life, then they start to realize like, oh, I have things to be grateful for and thankful for myself. But we have to be that regular example. That could be things like posting on your social media, something I'm thankful for every day. I have a friend who did a thankfulness every day for a year, 365 days of thankfulness. Oh my goodness, like we would all look forward to seeing like, what is Shelly gonna post about today? And like, then we would all be sharing. And then you see underneath her gratitude posts, just like comment after comment, like of things that other people are saying they're thankful for. Well, we can do that with our kids too. Like when they come into Sabbath school, first thing we can do is like, what am I grateful for and thankful for? And if teacher takes the lead, it helps the kids easily open up too, right? And sometimes it's things like, I'm just thankful it's spring break and I don't have to go to school this week. Sometimes it's things like, I'm thankful that my cat was okay because somebody's cat got sick and we prayed for them. They were okay. Oh, you guys want to hear a cool story? This just went through my brain. This is about like answers to prayers with kids. So I was teaching this kindergarten class. And we were saying our prayers, going around saying our prayer requests, and everybody is like, they had heard that there was a chance of snow. Well, in Portland, chance of snow usually doesn't mean much of anything. So then I was like, okay, well, we'll pray for snow. And in my heart, I'm like thinking like, oh, okay, we'll try. So I have like this little group. They're all just like 4 or 5-year-olds around me, and we were saying our prayers, and we prayed, dear Jesus, please send snow today because we really want to enjoy the snow. Amen. Literally, we opened our eyes and looked out the window, and there was a big white flakes coming down. So again, it's caught more than it's taught. Even though I was a little bit hesitant to say that prayer because I'm like, is God going to deliver this? I took the action, and then I think that affirms in them that God is listening and God is hearing our prayers. And back to the attitude of gratitude. I keep a thankfulness journal, like just every single morning. I try to write 10 things that I'm grateful for and thanking God for in my life. And sometimes they're very repetitive, and that's okay. Every single day without a beat, like I'm going to write, thank you, God, for my children because they are healthy and, like that's the greatest thing that He's given me. I'm going to say the same thing every day. But I can't expect to tell my juniors in Sabbath school that they should keep a gratitude journal if I'm not also doing it first, right? And so leading by example and putting into practice things, and then also sharing and being open with the kids that we have in our influence about how we're doing this. And, I have taken the conversation a little bit further with like my junior kids where I'm like, this is good for your mental health. You guys have a lot of busy stuff. You have sports and school and sports, and you have a busy schedule, and your mind can get really bogged down with just like all this stuff going on. If you can pause for a couple of minutes every day and just come up with a few things that you're grateful and thankful for, it reduces the cortisol levels in your brain, and it will help lower your stress level. Like this is just good for your health and for your mind. And when you can kind of like break out the science from it, then it's a little bit more legit to them, especially those 13-year-olds. Man, they can be tough.
I want you to pause for a moment and think about some of the things that April shared in this presentation. Reflection practice is so powerful, which is why we emphasize it with every podcast episode, as well as at the Propel conference itself. So stop for a moment and ask yourself this simple question. What was the big idea for you? How will you apply this in your ministry context? What are you inspired to do? And when this episode finishes, I encourage you to pause for a few minutes and just let your mind wander and reflect on what April has shared. This kind of reflection time can lead to some really transformative change. Well, that's it for this episode. We'd love to hear from you. You can send an email to podcast@propelconference.org. And please mark your calendar for next year's Propel Conference coming to Tacoma, Washington, April 27 to 30, 2025. Special thanks to April Burville for speaking at the 2024 Propel Conference, and to the North American Division Children's Ministries for sponsoring this episode. This has been the Propel Podcast, inspiration and innovation to grow your church. The Propel Podcast is produced by the crew at Sermon View, and the event recording services were provided by Adventist Learning Community. I'm Larry Witzel, wishing you God's richest blessing in your evangelistic journey. Please join us again next time for another episode of the Propel Podcast.